Hey everybody, welcome to Simple Art at Home with me, Laura Houston. Today we're going to have some fun drawing, and if you just want to watch and relax, that's completely fine too. Just to let you know, you will need two objects that you can use to draw circles with. So I'm going to be using a plate and my tape here. It can be anything, but we want two different size circles, okay? So we're going to first start by reviewing how to draw a sphere. And as you know, a sphere just starts with a circle. So I'll just do a rough circle up here. I'm just using a crayon, by the way. And for a more detailed lesson, I recommend that you either go to the Anaheim Elementary School District student portal, and under the Elements of Art, there's a lesson on shape and form that teaches you how to draw spheres. And also there are links below in the description of this video that will help you. So to draw a sphere, it starts with a circle, and a circle is considered just a shape. And we're going to turn it into form by adding shading and value. So before we start, you have to decide where your light source is coming from. So I'm going to make sure that my light source is coming from this section over here, like this angle, and I will draw a sun. Just to kind of remind me. And so if we have a light source coming from this direction, we're going to have a little hot spot right here. And by a hot spot, I mean where the light is pointed and glowing the most. Now, normally I would do this really lightly with a pencil, but I don't think you'd be able to see a pencil, so that's why I'm using crayon. So ideally, you don't really want that to show up. So I'm going to start by shading. So if my light source is coming from this direction, this side will be darker. So I'm just going to start by shading this way. And this is going to be the darker area here. And I'm just doing this sphere rather quickly because I have other detailed lessons on how to do a sphere. And as I get closer to the hot spot, I'm going to color a little bit lighter. And then even lighter, I'll just do some shading here, very light shading right here. And then I'm going to really darken this back here. And you'll see, just by adding shading, it will start to look three-dimensional. Sometimes I have to stand, it's hard if I'm looking from the side, so forgive me if my head blocks the camera a little bit. And then I'm just going to blend that a little bit. And then I'm going to soften this transition right here. Let's see how this is looking. Okay. Curve my lines a little bit. Okay. So this hot spot will stay the color of the paper. I'm not going to want to color on that. But there. So what you basically want to see is light here going to dark. And I'm not going to cast a shadow right now or draw the tabletop because the main part of this lesson will be down here, but this was just a quick review on shading from a light source. And you can do this with any color. You can do this with a pencil if you had a pencil, and pencils smudge really well too. And we could. I am using oil pastels, and if I really I wasn't planning on doing this, but I'll just show you how you can smudge with oil pastels, and it really gives it a softer look. It makes your finger dirty, but it works really well. It's actually, you can do shadow with it too, but it kind of gives you an idea. But hang on just 1 second. Okay, I have to clean my finger off a little bit. Okay. There. So basically, that's a very quick review on how to draw a sphere. And what we did, we started with, let me get here. So we started with a circle, which is a shape. And then we created a sphere, which in art, we call that a form. Because once you make a shape look three-dimensional, that becomes a form. Okay, so the next thing, I have a little napkin, thank you. I wasn't planning on smudging, but I just felt like it, and I'm glad I showed you that. Don't be afraid of getting your fingers messy with art. Okay, thank you. All right, my husband's always here to help. He's the one who runs the camera too. So now comes the fun part. You're probably wondering why there are some pears up in the corner of your screen. So I'm going to show you how to draw a realistic looking pear from starting with circle shapes. And I'm just going to show you this. So the pictures that you see in the corner of the screen up here were just pictures of, it's a pear that we happen to have on our counter in our fruit basket that we took a picture of. And we're going to use that as our model. And just so you know, like, think about how you could do that with any fruit that you have around your house, or even an object. You know, maybe you have a vase or anything, but I'm going to show you a pear. And if you are drawing from a model, I needed to be able to see something too, so we printed out the picture, and I'm looking at this just so you know, because if you're going to draw something, you know, artists look at a picture or an image. Okay, so I'll be turning my head a lot to look at that. So what we're going to do is start with a center line. Let me find my... Oh, here it is. I was looking for my black crayon. On the last video, we drew a vase, and we started with a center line and we drew ellipses. Remember, to get the framework or the skeleton of the vase, we're going to do the same thing in order to draw a pear. So the pear is sitting at an angle to the side. And so what I'm going to actually do, I'm going to make this one here. You can't see this, but I can, and this is so much better. So I'm going to move, let's see, I'm going to have a line going about, let's see, about right like this. And I'm not using a ruler because a pear is organic. You know, it's not made by a machine. This is going to be the frame. And I'm going to start with the bottom part of the pear. The bottom part of the pear is a larger circle. So I'm going to try, I'm using a plate here. It's like a little coffee cup saucer size. And I'm going to set it here carefully. Let's see. This does not even have to be perfect at all. Something like that. Okay. And then I think for the top part, I'm going to use my tape roll again, and I don't know, let me see if I want to use, okay, yeah, I want a circle that's about half the size, so I'm going to use it about right here. Okay. And I'm not even trying to be perfect with this, we're just kind of estimating, something like that. Okay. And then the stem, you know, this will translate into the stem, but I'm not going to draw a stem that's just straight up. I'm going to wait. I'm going to do that later. So what I'm going to start with, I think I will use a light green to start with my pear. And I'm just going to transfer my original circles into an outline of a pear. So, and again, I'm not following the circles exactly, but it just gives me an idea here. Let's see, kind of like that. Yeah, kind of like this. And then the bottom of the pear, remember, it's not really round, it's kind of flat. So this is going to be like this. We kind of did this with the base and the ellipses, if you remember. So I have a kind of a basic outline. And again, before you shade, you want to identify where your light source is going to come from. So I'm going to, again, have my light source coming from this direction. So with my crayon, and just to remind myself, I'm going to draw this going this way. And of course, on a real piece of art that you are going to turn in, you don't want to have that on there. But that's just from me when I'm practicing and sketching. I draw that just to remind myself. Okay, so I'm going to start sketching with a little bit darker green. And the reason I practice with this sphere up here is because we are going to mimic the same style of shading down here. And really, I know that my pear is going to be darker on this side. So I'm going to just start shading over here. And normally, if I were just drawing this for myself and not for the camera, I wouldn't have used a dark black crayon here because I don't want that to show up later. But for our purposes, we're just practicing. So here I have the beginnings of some curves and some shadows here. Just kind of shading this in. Remember, I like to layer a lot of colors. Just starting this here. I think, let's see, maybe I could put the stem in. I want my stem to be about coming from here. Not right at the top. We're going to start the stem down here. And so I might make it, so it kind of goes up and over. And it kind of has something like that on it. And then the pear itself kind of has some little things like this where the stem is. You know, if you can see that, yeah. It's a little darker up here in this area. And I want to show you the hot spots, because remember here we left a hot spot on the sphere. I also want to leave some hot spots on the pear. So I think I will just outline them here. And it looks like they kind of go on a line. Can you see the shininess on the pictures on the upper part of the screen? So it looks like we've got some kind of shiny spots that are like this and here, looks like. And I also noticed some shiny spots on the stem itself at the top. So I'm not going to color in the whole stem. I'm going to leave parts of it shiny. Let's see if that works. Looks like there's a little shine up there at the top. There. And it looks like there's some darkness over here. Okay, so now I'm going to continue to shade darker over here. And let's see. I can't forget, you know, there's some texture on the pear too. I'm going to start adding in maybe some lighter color here. You know I always like to use black with shading too. You know I like to add the drama. Okay, let's see. I'm not going to color over the hot spots. I'm going to let those stay the color of the paper. And again, I'm using newsprint. I'm not using white paper. I'm starting with newsprint. I'm going to add lots of shading here to really make it stand out. Let's see. Just going to get this lighter color base down first. Okay, now that I have this lighter green in here, I'm going to go in and add more of this darker green. Even though I have the center line, don't use that center line as a stopping point for your dark color because it'll look too rigid and it won't look natural. Make sure you draw some of your darker lines past that center line. It's okay. And I'm just going to keep filling this in here. Do some darkness right here to kind of show the curve of the pear. And I might even add a little bit of yellow over here. And see my hot spot still? Yeah. Ooh, I like that yellow in there with the lighter green. That really makes it stand out. Now I'm going to start adding a little bit of black. Look at this. Talk about the shadow really taking effect. Ooh, we need to add a table and a shadow too. The shadow that the pear casts to make it look really realistic. A little bit of black goes a long way when you're shading. And I'm still, if you notice, I'm using oil pastels, but you can certainly use crayons, and you could even do this with pencil if you wanted. I think there's a sample of just a black and white gray pear, and that works really well too. Okay, let's see. Remember, the edges don't have to be perfect because this is a natural object. I feel like we need some more definition up here. Okay, so let's pause for a moment on the shading. I might go back to it and see what I want to add, but I'm going to add the edge of the table and the wall. So I know you can't see this, but I'm looking at this picture. So here's my background. So I'm going to make sure that I draw the table up high, not down low. You know, sometimes I see my students want to draw the fruit sitting on the table right down here, and it just doesn't end up looking as realistic. I'm going to use brown, and let's see, I will start somewhere here. I got to get over here so I can see. So the table's going to be like this, and then I'm going to bring it across about right here. Okay, let me step back. So, you know, sometimes you got to step back and look at your work. Okay. So what I'm going to do is a little bit of shading here with some dark. Then I'm going to transition it to a lighter color. Just shading a little bit. This all adds to it's like an illusion, right? Because we're drawing on a 2D surface and we're making it look 3D. So there's all these tricks that you can do to make the illusion of depth, because that's what we're working with. Shading is value. We call that value, and by shading or adding value, you add depth. I'm going to change to a different color now for the table. I'm going to just kind of transition into this color here. I'm going to try to bring this down. Here as well. Just adds a little interest too when you layer colors. I love layering different colors. Sometimes instead of adding black, you can try adding like a deep purple too. Sometimes it adds a lot of depth. Okay, I'm still going with this. And I'm just going to bring this down here a little bit. So now we know that our pear is going to cast a shadow on the table, and I can see the shadow in my picture of the pear that I'm looking at. You can probably see the shadow on the corner of your computer screen. So I can see that it kind of comes out here like this, and it's rounded, right? It's not straight, it's rounded. And then it's up here, something like that. And the shadow will be darkest down here, where the pear will block it. And then, as the shadow gets farther away, it lightens up. Bring down here and dark. Remember, the most important thing, I talked about this before, I say this a lot. The whole point of this is to have fun while you're making art. Don't get too hung up in the end product, because it's so easy to get frustrated, especially if you're critical of yourself. I know a lot of kids who are perfectionists, and that's not the point here. We're learning and we're experimenting and we're having fun. So art is about the process that you go through. Okay, so here we have a shadow. And I think what I could do, if you want to get fancy, you can add, the wall back here to make it look more formalized, like it's a still life. You can add the wall. How's that look? I'm going to try to go around the stem here. There we go. We got some wall there. And, if I want to, maybe I will. I did smudge a little bit. Let's see what happens. Crayons, you can't really smudge with your finger, but definitely you can with pencil. Pencil smudge is great. If you've ever used like charcoal for drawing, that works great too. But so let's see. I'm just gonna take my finger. You can take. Let me see what I have here. You can also use a dry. If you don't want to get your finger dirty, you can use a dry like napkin. It's kind of smudging. It's softening a little bit. Oh yeah, look at all that green coming through. And yeah, basically what it's going to do is soften the look of your pear. So we are almost finished. And again, I have many drawing lessons on the Anaheim Elementary School District student portal under the Elements of Art, and they're also linked to my YouTube page that this video is linked to. And I think before I go, I'm just going to add a little bit more black right here. Just a little bit more to make it darker. Right here too. Okay, so let's sum up what we did. We started with a sphere, and we actually started with a circle, and we turned the circle into a sphere by shading. And shading in art is also called adding value, the element of art value, which adds depth. Okay, or like that 3D look, because we're working on a 2D paper. Flat surface is 2D. We've made it 3D. We made our objects appear 3D. Then we used a real model of a pear and started with the center line. Remember that framework, and drew circles, and I traced. I traced with a roll of tape and a dinner plate. You gotta use whatever you have in the house. There's no reason to be fancy. And we ended up shading. And remember, it's really, really important to identify where your light source is coming from. And don't forget, we added the table and the shadow that the pear cast. And don't be afraid to explore with colors and layering of colors. So I hope you enjoyed this activity, and I hope this inspires you to look at the fruit or open up your refrigerator and find something that you might want to draw, and pay attention to the hot spots that light might create on that object. So thank you for watching. I'm Laura Houston, and you've watched Simple Art at Home. Thank you very much.